Today on the LIVEcast, we are talking about the life of the church and the mission of God.
Hey everybody, welcome to the LIVEcast.
Oh,
I don't know if we're live. Are we live? We've had Ian McCarthy in the top chat. Hello, Ian. Nice to see you.
a few issues getting started today. Unfortunately, a bit of technology didn't quite play ball. So
10 minutes late. That's not too late, is it?
No.
How late is too late?
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
15
so
minutes
we're comfortably inside that. My name is Glen Scrivener.
And I'm Paul Feasy. Good to be here again.
And we are thinking about mission and the church and all sorts of stuff like that. But perhaps before we get into our title for today about missional church, we should make an announcement that we are on the TikTok.
The TikTok. The
Yes.
tickety talk.
Yeah. Or as the French say, le toc du tic. We're making some noise on TikTok. And do you guys have TikTok? We very much hope you do. I mean, if you're going to be contemporary and relevant in today's society, reaching out to the kids, keeping your finger on the pulse, then you'll need to be on the TikTok.
You need to be there.
Yeah. And we're there. And we've been there for a couple of weeks. And we wanted to show you one of our videos that's making some waves, shall we say.
Has made some waves, that's for sure.
And let's have a look at our TikTok video, and then we'll let you know about some of the feedback we've had on our TikTok video. Let's have a look. Christians do not believe in a supernatural being.
God's not an extra thing. It's not an add-on. It's not like you do an inventory of all the stuff in the universe and the atheist counts up a bajillion items on the list and a Christian counts up a bajillion plus one. God is not another thing in the world. He's not a supernatural being.
Think of A Midsummer Night's Dream. In the world that Shakespeare created, there are a whole bunch of supernatural beings. There are fairies who play pranks on the mortals. So if you like, there's a supernatural and a natural element. And then there's Oberon, who is king of the fairies. God is not like Oberon. God is like Shakespeare. In fact, the Bible says, in God we live and move and have our being. So when someone says, where is God? It's not like a mortal from Midsummer Night's Dream asking, where is Oberon? It's more like asking, where is Shakespeare?
And one way of answering that question is, where isn't Shakespeare? God is more than a character. He's the author.
Christians do not believe in a supernatural.
God's not an extra thing.
So there we are.
Add-on.
And there was my chin. There's my chin. Hello, everyone. There's my chin. We don't want my chin.
It's a fine chin.
Yeah, I don't think we want. We don't want this. Oh yeah, that's it. There we go.
You'd have made a good Batman. That's just
right?
like your audition. Just see the chin, chiseled jawline.
I'm Batman. So that was our tickety talk, and we decided to go bold, I think.
Go big or go home. That's always been our approach, hasn't it, really?
And we don't think that God being a supernatural being is big enough.
No.
Is basically
to think God is merely supernatural.
Yes.
Too small.
A supernatural being?
Yeah.
What? Like he's some kind of Bigfoot in the sky? No, we say no. And yet, I think there was some misunderstanding in the comments. So we don't dislike the controversy. The controversy means clicks.
Absolutely, and we're all about the clicks. That's what we're here for.
But we did get one comment on TikTok saying, "I rebuke you in the supernatural power of the Lord Jesus Christ. In His mighty name, I bind every lying spirit at work here." So. I
was feeling quite bound over the weekend, actually. So that probably explains that now.
Senna might be the thing.
Yeah. More fiber.
Yeah. Too many boiled eggs. Or you'd been rebuked in the mighty name of Jesus.
Yeah,
That could have been it. I'm not sure they quite got what
There's
we were
always
trying to say.
one comment like that underneath any video, isn't there?
You're always being bound in the mighty name of Jesus.
Can't go a week without being bound by
You're not doing TikTok right if you're not being anathematized by somebody.
No.
I like that. There was another one that said, God is on his throne in heaven, which isn't the natural. Stop it with the feel-good nonsense.
Nonsense.
I think they meant nonsense, but yeah.
Is there a limit for how much you can write?
Maybe that was it.
That's it. Is it like
the nonsense? Yeah. No, there is definitely a limit. Yeah. Is it 150 characters? Something like that. Are there any millennials in the audience?
In fairness, on that TikTok video, it's a big idea to communicate in the space of 60 seconds tops. You've got to do that. So, you're leaving yourself open to the fact that you may want to bring a bit more clarification.
Right.
And we will. Yeah.
We just this morning, we were recording some response videos where we tried not to take things too personally. And instead tried to bring both light and heat to the conversation. Brandon John Kemeny says on Top Chat, was the TikTok video inspired by Rupert Short's book, God is No Thing? Totally agree with the point, but it's a really tough concept to present compellingly and in 60 seconds. No, I don't know that book, but I think I like it because it's a provocative title. So God is no thing. Well, it's this idea, isn't it, that God is the author, not a character, not even the biggest character within the story, the author of all being. I think that's helpful, especially if you continue the story and you say, and the author wrote himself in as the most significant character.
Yeah, and I mean, I was watching back the video, and I was going to say, well, I think it's in the illustration, isn't it? The use of the Shakespeare, and of course, within A Midsummer Night's Dream, you have Oberon and these, fairies and all these characters who are very much in the world.
Yes,
they are supernatural beings, but they're within this realm.
Yeah.
Right. And then actually say, no, God is not like that. God is Shakespeare. And I go, well, that seems pretty clear. Apparently not.
You thought the video comments would be also bringing the clarity.
I've just noticed that people saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm a millennial." I've just realised I'm a millennial.
You're a millennial.
Why are you?
Not me.
Don't drag me down.
I think I'm an exennial. I think I'm just on the cusp.
So is that like between Generation X?
I'm a tweener. Between Generation X and millennial. Do we have any Gen Zs in the audience? Teo Falai, millennial in the audience.
Is Gen Z the current one?
Yeah. Oh well, no. Isn't there like if you were born like our kids? What are they? Are they Zs? No, that's Gen Z. That's Gen Z. Just a nuisance. So that's so maybe the millennials here can. Teo and Brandon, you can let us know. Is it pronounced TikTok? Is it the TikTok or is it?
So I like listening to the Coldplay. We've got Generation X representing.
Wendy Lomont, how you doing, Wendy? Generation X, all the way from the States. Hello. So yeah, this is not why we brought you all here. This is
we could go on.
We could go on about le toc de tic, as they say en France. But we have been in a series looking at sort of Church 2 and looking at some of the abuse scandals. Last week, we had a look at a letter from a Buddhist listener, which we thought raised some really fascinating issues about Christians and mission and evangelism. And our Buddhist friend said, Christians are preoccupied, perhaps even obsessed with bringing others to Jesus. The amount of time, money, ingenuity, effort, and sacrifices Christians spend to convert others is truly astonishing. You pray for it. You have conferences on how to do it. You celebrate it when it's successful. You vow to keep trying when it isn't. You donate money for it. Even the many admirable projects that Christians have to help the sick and marginalized often have a conversion agenda behind them. And then here he says, could Christians suffer fewer scandals if they paid less attention to converting others and more to transforming themselves? And then he mentions about Fletcher and Zacharias, and he said they had no time to look at themselves. They were too busy planning how to save others. Like, ouch.
Yeah.
Does the shoe fit?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, some people were a little bit kind of miffed, I guess, weren't they, that a Buddhist was saying this to us and that we were taking it with some seriousness.
Right. Right.
Who's this person from outside
the
camp?
Right.
We should listen to them.
Which is fascinating because it kind of it is the very mindset that he's critiquing.
Yeah, absolutely. But it strikes me, I mean, there are things, in the things you said where you think, okay, I think there is some not quite an understanding of certain parts of Christianity and why we'd, and whatnot. But nevertheless, there were valid points in there that I think, were worth addressing, and we shouldn't just throw them out because we, feel he doesn't get this or doesn't understand that. But it's interesting that we've got a Buddhist looking in at the church and going, yeah, you've got some problems there. Maybe if it's because of this thing. And then on the Ravi Zacharias thing, you interviewed him, didn't you? I can't remember the guy's name now. The guy who for years...
Steve Boffman.
Yeah, who'd been saying, who's not a Christian, and he's been kind of going, hey guys, look at Ravi, look at all this stuff.
Right.
And it was people outside the church who were able to kind of look in and say, there's some problems here. Whilst most of us were either turning a blind eye or were completely oblivious.
Right.
Right. And that's just interesting, isn't it? That God is using people outside of the church to kind of critique the church. And hopefully... What do we do with that? Do we just push it away and go, nope, we don't need to listen to them because then they're not one of us?
They're undermining the mission. Yes.
Yeah. Or do we say, well, maybe God can work even through these people? Yeah. And might bring a good thing.
I had a guy on Twitter say, why are you listening to a Buddhist? He doesn't have the gospel. And I'm like, well, he might not have the gospel. He does have eyes. Like he can see what's going on. And he grew up in the church, right? And he can spot things. Steve Boffman definitely. And sometimes the Steve Boffmans and this Buddhist guy can spot things better than we can because we have what's called betrayal blindness, where we are very invested in being loyal to a certain person and therefore not seeing their faults. And someone else just looks at, who knows, a Ravi Zacharias, and they're just like, that don't impress me much. Is this really what impresses you guys? And they can actually sometimes see things that we miss.
Yeah.
And then through some biblical lenses, there is the fact that the Old Testament saints were constantly, like, the songs that they sang about Israel was just like, the nations are terrible and we are the worst, we are the worst, we are the worst. That was like the chorus, And the prophets were always the ones saying, no, we need to repent. There were oracles against the nations, but for every time they pointed the finger at, the other nations, there were three fingers pointing back. And it was the false prophets who said, Nebuchadnezzar, can't come and take us into exile. He never will. And of course, Nebuchadnezzar was doing the Lord's work. And those lying prophets were saying, no, our people are stellar. And it was the true prophets who were saying, no, we need to go with Nebuchadnezzar on this. Even if he's going to dismantle the house of God stone by stone, and it will be incredibly uncomfortable for us. We need to acknowledge the truth wherever it lies.
Sobering, really, isn't it?
Stephen Finch says, "Common grace, people." Or is that the middle name to Pulp's song? Common people. People always miss out. Middle name Grace.
The grace part.
Common grace, people. Brandon says all truth is God's truth. Yeah, right. And so people are like, why are you agreeing with a Buddhist? You were like, well, it helps that he was right.
For a start.
It helps that he was speaking some truth there. So we want to continue on in this vein, and we want to think together about the life of the church and the mission of God, because what this letter was pointing out was, if we are not transformed people, then why are we going out into the world to say, come on into Christianity, where the water is just full of sharks and scum, right? We need to work on ourselves if we're going to have any kind of good news for the rest of the world. So how do we coordinate an inward look for the church to take care of the flock and an outward movement to the world where we seek after lost sheep? How do we do that? And so, I often think that, this statement, both halves of this statement are correct, but sometimes we put the emphasis on the first half and sometimes we put the emphasis on the second half. So that the statement is, the life of the church is to be the mission of God. And so some people say, the life of the church is to be the mission of God. So inward focus, get healthy, and you'll grow. But then others say, the life of the church is to be the mission of God.
Yeah.
Right? And so the very purpose of any church gathering or activity or life at all is evangelism.
Yeah.
And out we go. And those are two quite different caricatures. Paint the picture of the caricatures, Paul.
Yeah. So I suppose if you say the life of the church is to be the mission of God, super caricatured would be to not really have any focus on any outward focus on evangelism or anything like that. It would really just be, well, let's do church, let's do the church thing, whatever that looks like, for believers in, perhaps in the most indecipherable way possible, so that someone who came in from the outside wouldn't be able to make head nor tail of any of it. And that itself, as the body of believers is built up through that, that is the mission of God coming to fulfillment.
If you build it, they will come.
Exactly. Exactly. If you build it, you'll come. And then if you flip it the other way, the life of the church is to be the mission of God. It's maybe, this is something we're probably more familiar with in our circles, is that everything is focused on evangelism. So like every application, doesn't matter what the passage is, somehow the application is, there's 3 points, still found 3 points, they're all about evangelism. Evangelize, and evangelize.
Yeah,
you need to do evangelism. You have the conversations around the water cooler. You should be trying to get people into one-to-one Bible studies. That's what it is. Your sole purpose in working your job, being an accountant, is really to meet other accountants and have Bible studies with them to make them Christians.
Because the one thing you can't do in 1,000 years' time is evangelize. So that's the only reason specifically you're on planet Earth.
We won't do accounting
right
either.
now. May it come to an end. And so should we have a look at some of the caricatures? So let's first of all have a look at the contemporant caricature of. So this is where evangelicalism kind of really goes for lowest common denominator, just seeker-friendly, speaking the language of the kids, getting onto the tickety-tock, and all that jazz.
I'd never do that.
So let's have a look at contemporant.
Arms wide open, revealing my tattoo, so you know I have a past. Quirky transition to band. Invite everyone to stand. Let's do it.
This is the song that everyone knows. It's the song that everyone knows. My new song that nobody knows. Nobody knows this song.
Oh, he's wearing this exact
I want you to learn this song and buy my record in the bookstore after the service. I just want to invite the ushers up as we prepare for our offering.
Not that coming.
Feel free to give if you feel led. It's between you and God, but we're tracking it.
Edgy. Don't you love this?
Oh yeah, the old BT before the service.
Yeah, hyper-saturated kind of images. Grungy.
One man has all the answers.
I have all the answers.
I'm not sure about
Showing a
this
picture of a puppy and or a baby from an impoverished third world nation, speaking softly to draw you in, and then emphatically driving home my point. Long pause.
Yep.
Whispering. Repetition. Still pausing. Pained expression. Long prayer so that the worship leader can get back on stage.
This is the closing song with strings that'll make you cry. Coming soon to your town, a new kind of church. You will be lifted high and challenged to grow. We call that growtivation. You call this Sunday
What we
morning.
missed there was it started out with we're both contemporary and relevant, which makes us
Contemporary.
So yes, Wendy says lol. Victor says me. Okay, Victor. All right. It's not all about
you.
It's not all about you, Victor. Me. Teo says this rings so true. It rings so true for Paul. That literally,
I know. I was just like, what are the odds?
Yeah, the worship leader. This is worship leader get up, isn't it?
Yeah, reveal my tattoos from my back.
you get rid of robes and you end up just like having a different uniform.
Exactly.
But you always have a uniform. Get rid of liturgy and you always have, hey guys, suddenly you've always got liturgy. Is this church in Texas? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you've got a population that is, largely in church on a Sunday, you can get away with this shtick.
I remember seeing something like that. It was on Chris Moyles was talking about it on Radio 1.
Yes.
Where he said, like, over the weekend he'd seen a video of something looked a bit like that, where there was people being baptized as well and stuff. And he was saying it was amazing. He was saying, I've been to gigs with less energy. Like these people were just loving it, and he was quite, they were actually quite gushing about it.
Yeah. And at that stage, we love that. We're just like, yeah.
Play Happy Day again. It's got that riff.
play Coldplay and then just segue into some kind of.
Did I tell you about the time I went to the cathedral?
Tell it. I love this story.
I was at Coventry Cathedral, and it was a student service in the evening, and before the service, I was just there with my wife, and I heard this tune, and I'm thinking, I really recognise this. I recognise this tune. What is it though? And then it got to the chorus, and the singer just started going, Lord, my heart is on fire. And I was like, oh my word, it's Sex on Fire by the Kings of Leon. Sex on Fire. No.
That's the definition of contemporament.
Oh dear.
Because anyone who's a Kings of Leon fan would hear that and think, oh, I must try out Jesus.
This Lord is for me.
But it's that lowest common denominator. Make the barrier to entry as low as possible.
Yeah, seeker sensitive. That's what it is. It's all about the outsider welcoming. There's a lot of positives to that, isn't there?
Get them in. But then on the other side, the caricature on the other side that doesn't care about any of that is well represented, we feel, by the evil vicar, as played by David Mitchell from the Mitchell and Webb show. Let's have a look at Evil Vicar together.
I think it's great the way churches have become more inclusive and open-minded these days.
Yeah, I'm sure. I just don't think I'm really religious.
Oh, they're happy just to talk about stuff, and it's a great place to make friends.
Can I help you?
Hi, we're new to the area. We've just bought 3 of the old almshouses. We're having them knocked through, and we thought we'd just pop in and say hi.
Who the hell did you think you were going to say hi to? The Lord your God? Because I'm not sure you've lived lives worthy of his attention.
Yeah, we're not particularly religious, I suppose, but I think we'd both say we were spiritual people, wouldn't we, Tom?
Yeah.
And we're just interested to find out more.
Not particularly religious. Interested. Spiritual. Are you testing me, Satan?
What happened to the friendly lady vicar with the colourful jumper that I met last week?
She's gone, child. They've all gone, banished by the bishop. I know where they're going eventually. In the meantime, Daventry. And we're back. The incredibly horrible and twisted people who are still unaccountably vicars.
Maybe we should...
I saw you in here last week. I saw you reading the notices and talking about your views and eating other people's biscuits. We were all watching you from the vestry, and we all thought you were a...
Steady on. Look, I mean, my wife's entitled to her views.
Oh, isn't she just? Aren't you all entitled to your half-assed musings on the divine? You've thought about eternity for 25 minutes and think you've come to some interesting conclusions. Well, let me tell you, I stand with 2,000 years of darkness and bafflement and hunger behind me. My kind have harvested the souls of 1 million peasants, and I couldn't give a for your internet-assembled philosophy.
We have a right to be here. This is a place of peace.
Oh, please. That's a very recent idea, and not one that I think is going to catch on.
Well, I'm certainly not...
Begone! Begone to your satanic almshouse conversion! Leave here, damn sinning dog! Oh, at least leave a quid for the upkeep!
Begone!
It's your satanic almshouse conversion. So true though. I mean, Eleanor Vass has said exactly what pastors are thinking when people say spiritual. Like, I'm just very spiritual. Yeah.
Be gone!
I think we should highlight though that that although we're caricaturing the other side, we're not suggesting that if you are more on that end, you are necessarily an evil vicar.
No.
It may just be very much
No.
all about the life of the church.
No. Nor that if you're a seeker-sensitive church that you're as vapid as
you
the
are.
other.
No.
But yes, and what we respect about the evil vicar is he's not cringy. He's not a quivering mass of availability, as Paul van der Klee kind of characterizes. Most American pastors are quivering masses of availability. Like me. I want to reel you in to my thing. And clearly, David Mitchell doesn't care about reeling you into. He's got his thing. He's stood on thousands of years. He's harvested the souls of a million peasants. Bafflement and hunger is his natural element, and that's. And what I like about that is there is a sense of, I know what we are about. Here is the church. We've stood for thousands of years, and we have this thing. And if you want to come on in, it's not going to be tea and cake.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if this thousand of year old thing does not look like a gig.
Yes.
At your local Starbucks. Or
yeah.
It is,
And praise God that it doesn't. Tom James says, only stood on 2,000 years, though he must have forgotten the Testament. Yes. Many do, Tom. Many do. But, and I often think of like the Eastern Orthodox Church in terms of a very slow moving church that is just about trying to be ancient. It's not trying to be modern. At all. It's going out of its way to be ancient. And even if the language of the liturgy and the divine service is a language that has stopped being spoken by the natives, 1,000 years ago, never mind. This is how our ancestors did it. And therefore, when I spoke to Jonathan Pajot a few weeks ago, I mean, he's from the Eastern Orthodox tradition. And I kind of said, we evangelicals, we're so much like the person on the outside of the cathedral who says, don't go into the cathedral. It's all really baffling. You're like, here, let me give you a little pamphlet with a thumbnail sketch of how the cathedral works. And that's the main thing, And, so the evangelicals are outside the cathedral in the tourist information booth, making everything, understandable, explicable, right? Yeah. Whereas in the Eastern Orthodox Church, it's like, let me take you by the hand and yank you into this ancient building, and you don't have any idea what's going on, and it's bewildering.
And you're awed by it.
You're awed by it.
Overpowering thing.
And it's the deep weird. And I sort of used this phrase on Jonathan Pajot, and I said, what I like about you, Jonathan, is you're very happy. You're deeply weird. He took it really well. He's such a sport. But then he said, but it's not weird. Right. I was like, what do you mean it's not weird? Because like he'll go into in his videos things about don't wear cloth that is of linen and wool. Don't mix your fabrics. And he'll like dive straight in, or why Jesus cursed the fig tree, and he'll go into like the cosmic mountain and talk about all this typology from the Bible, and it's all deeply weird, like from one point of view. And then he's like, but that's not weird. That is the pattern of reality. And the Bible has given us these patterns of reality that are strange to us and incredibly strange to modern ears. But if you give yourself to this, and if you come on inside and make your home in the deep weird, suddenly you find it explaining reality to you. And you suddenly get changed by this ancient liturgy and the divine service and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's something we really miss. We're always on the outside with the pamphlet.
Paddling in the shallows rather than the deep dive.
Yeah. On the other hand, you meet a lot of people who are much more high church, certainly in an Anglican setting. And very often they'll say, I came to faith through the Christian Union at university, and it was evangelicals that converted me. And I found something else, in terms of my spiritual life now. And you sort of think, well, would they have found that something else if it weren't for the evangelicals?
Sure.
We're getting out there.
Do you think
the
that
word.
the reason? Do you think part of the reason behind that is that maybe as evangelicals, because we tend to be more at the end where we say the mission, the life of the church is to be the mission,
Yes.
do the mission,
Yes.
is that we have such a focus on that actually once people are in,
Yes.
we don't quite know what to do with them anymore. Apart from say go and do some more mission,
Yes.
and so I think, when we talked last week about, transforming ourselves, or self-reflection and things like that.
Yeah.
That's not something our circles are particularly good at.
Yeah.
Discipleship
Yeah.
really just means go and do more evangelism.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas
there's a pyramid scheme. Recruit some more people for the pyramid scheme.
So if you've got into the church and you're thinking, oh great, and then you find yourself just in this shallow water,
and
you're thinking, man, I want the deep water of something more. You can see why you might end up falling into like a high Anglican or or high church type thing, or Eastern Orthodox or whatever, because you could go, oh, there is something over there, that over here it doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere near.
Yes. I mean, a high church Anglican friend of mine on Twitter, when I was talking about these sorts of things, just sort of said, be careful what you wish for. Like if you think the grass is always greener on my side, he says, like trying to get anyone to just name the name of Jesus.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
beyond a Sunday is difficult.
And they say, like, if the grass is green on the other side, it's probably because it's astroturf. That's what they say, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And so I think the reason why we have these two polarities is that we're meant to hold these things together. We're meant to hold the life of the church and the mission of God together. So I'm thinking of places like Matthew 5. From verse 13, Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. So salt is different from the earth, but it's meant to be kind of distributed throughout the earth. Different and missionary, And then, the next analogy is you're the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. So again, light is different to the rest of the world, but it also spreads out into the darkness. So it is both very distinctive and missional at the same time.
And that salty, that idea of being more salty, like that we talked about that a few weeks ago with the John Stott thing. Like his thing was so much about that if maybe we don't put enough emphasis within our circles on being more salty, but if we were to be more salty, then of course that has that knock-on effect that we are salt in the society.
Yes.
And Stott very much said, didn't he? If you look around at society and society's gone to pot. Really, it's the church's fault.
Yes.
It's because we've stopped being salty enough.
Yes.
So, if we want to bring people with it, into the church, being more like salt and light, working on that within the life of the church, which then, of course, goes out into the world, has the effect of bringing people in anyway.
Yes.
Whereas if we just kind of think, well, we don't need to worry too much about saltiness. We just need to focus on doing some sales pitch, Jesus stuff.
Right. Then our distinctiveness will be like completely gone, and will be trampled underfoot. And, in an Old Testament frame, if you think of Genesis 12 and, Abraham is blessed in order to be a blessing to the nations. And it's like the Abrahamites are not loved instead of the nations. They are loved differently to the nations, but they're not loved instead of the nations. They're loved for the sake of the nations. And I think it's that priestliness that we really need to wrap our heads around. You think of the Levites, and they were set apart from the other 11 tribes in the Old Testament. And so they were very different, and yet they could not become a commune by themselves. Hey, let's just be Levites together. And, Bill, you can cook and it'll be fine. That would not work, because in order to be priestly, they need to be representing the other 11 tribes. And so it's this distinction and missional, character that's meant to go together, which is why Jesus then says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your plural good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So we're to be different because we're light, but we're meant to be shining in our communal life on show before the world. so that they can glorify our Father in heaven. So it is our life as church that is meant to be missional, but somehow we need to make that life on show somehow.
Yeah.
And so we've had a comment from Andy Stove, who says, any thoughts on mission through community, like in Total Church? I think there might be some ways that some Total Church thinking can go wrong at times. But I think it is what they're always trying to put together is mission and community in those circles. And they want the life of the body to be on show before people. I think one of the dangers of some of the solo evangelism that happens in some circles is the idea is you go off and be an evangelist, and you go off and be an evangelist, you go off and be an evangelist, and we'll meet up again on Sunday and refuel.
Yeah. And
then you can go off on your Lone Ranger missions. And you get that even with, how are we gonna reach the cricket club for Christ? Well, let's make sure we've got one Christian in each team, and one Christian in the firsts, one Christian in the seconds, one Christian in the thirds. And I always think, why not just have all three Christians in the thirds?
Yeah.
Because then you've got your light shining before others. Then you've got the community on show.
And do you think that some of that is because we just think in such individualistic terms in the West that it's just quite hard for us to even imagine, to even think from a community point of view.
Yeah.
Evangelism is about me doing something or you doing something. It's not about us doing something.
Right.
Even if you go as a group into a town to go and speak to people, we all go as a group, and then you go off over there and I go off over there, and you come back and you say, well, I had a good conversation. And did you have a good conversation? And it's not actually it's not really a body thing going on there.
Right.
It's just lots of individuals doing things and something else.
That's just rampant in the West, isn't it? When I ask people, what have been your standout moments of oneness with Jesus? And people will almost uniformly talk about, I was sitting on the end of my bed praying and had this experience of Jesus. But even if they say I was at a Christian convention, it was always, I was just lost in the worship, just me and Jesus.
Sure.
You go to the New Testament and say, what is the paradigmatic experience of being in Christ? It's church. It's body life. Ephesians 3, that we would know how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ together with all the saints. And so we're just not very good at the together with all the saints stuff at all. But then you go to John 13, and Jesus says, a new commandment I give to you, love one another as I've loved you. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples. If you have a gospel tract that you can hand out to a stranger on a train, No, he doesn't say that. It's like, but somehow our love for one another needs to be on show. So you can't be the Levites who go and form the commune and love one another by yourselves, because that's not priestly. That light is not shining before others. That city is not on a hill.
No.
So you do. So what I do appreciate from the Total Church kind of outlook is this idea that you don't go and join the gym all by yourself. You figure out if that's why you want to join the gym. If you want to join the gym to be a missionary, then find at least one other person. If that's why you're doing it, then go on mission together. And we've kind of lost that, really. Another New Testament verse on how we hold together this sort of priestliness, this missional activity, and the community. 1 Peter 2, you're a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, right? So this is all corporate. You're God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, now you're the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, now you've received mercy. Dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles to abstain from sinful desires which wage war against your soul. So be distinctive. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. And, sometimes we get twitchy. Good deeds? Can't mime the gospel, man. Can't mime the gospel. Well, Peter will even say in 1 Peter 3, verse 1, that wives can win their husbands without a word through this Christ-like behavior that they have. So,
I think the reason we get twitchy about it a little bit is because, people will say, oh, it's just, if you're just doing kind of these deeds, or even the non-Christian does good deeds, even the unbeliever does these things. But I wonder whether we have a deficient view of what it means to be, doing those good deeds? Do we just think that doing good deeds is just being nice and doing things like that? Or what does it actually mean to live the Christian-shaped life, a cross-shaped life?
Yeah.
As a community together, is it more than just we're all quite nice to each other?
And nothing too scandalous has happened.
Well, exactly,
in living memory.
And I think that's probably why we do get stuck on the deeds thing a bit. Because how many times? I mean, we've all heard people say that, haven't we? The thing about you can't just be nice because Mavis over there is not a Christian and she's nice.
Yeah.
You need to talk about Jesus, and you kind of go, okay, yeah. But should it look different? Should there be something different about the way we do things than even the non-believer does things?
Yeah.
It's more than just nice things.
Yeah. Keep your nose clean. Stay out of trouble. Don't get any trouble with the law. That's setting a really low bar. And like Christ is calling us to die. Take up your cross and pour out your life.
I've been struck recently, actually. So like earlier in the year, someone in our community, not a Christian, when I say community, just in my local town, she was a teacher at a primary school, she passed away. And lots of people kind of rallied around quite quickly, and they raised lots of money for the family and parcels, and provision. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, well, they're not, the people are doing this are not Christians.
Yeah.
And yet they're doing this amazing thing for this family. And just this last week, someone I knew passed away, and like already there's all kind of these things, just giving stuff, and thousands and thousands of pounds given in support for the family. And you kind of look at that and you go, well, these are people, like these people as pagans, and they're doing these amazing deeds of love for people. And I wonder whether part of it, though, is in my head was just going, but we're all doing this for people we knew and we loved.
Okay, yeah.
Whereas in the church, maybe one distinctive at least is we ought to do that for the people who hate us and have scorned us, for our enemies, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Because don't even tax collectors, love their own kinds. Don't even, so where does Jesus say that? In Matthew chapter 5, you've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and send rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So that's one thing to say is that, how we are meant to be distinctive is to love even the unlovely and the unloving. I think the other thing to say is, we can just celebrate what people do when they show self-giving love like that, and we don't need to feel like competitive about that. And kind of go, well, I can't compete on being nice, so at least I'll do the words thing. At least I'll be very distinctive in the words that I give. And you're like, well, just maybe don't compete with them. Maybe just celebrate what they're doing and give to the same crowdfunder, and plod along doing the good deeds that you're doing in the church. And hopefully those good deeds would be characterized by giving it to those who can't repay you, and all those sorts of things. But we don't need to be threatened by the common grace, the goodness, the love that other people have. And I think part of it is like, we feel like we can't compete with people being loving. So instead, the thing that will mark us out as distinctive is that we've got
preaching.
We've
got Bible preaching.
Got angular words.
With the wordy people.
We'll be distinctive in our words because we can't outlove them.
We've said before, the danger is, when you swing so far that way, is it becomes, we won't bother doing any nice things. We won't bother doing any good things at all because we'll just do the word thing. So you almost discard any need to do anything and act, live it out.
Stephen Finch has asked a good question. He said, with the wife example in 1 Peter 3, the husband will know she is going to church. I think the criticism of not needing to speak is, how will people know it's because you are a Christian? And I think one of the answers to that is because you'll be drawing people into bonds of friendship and relationship, rather than at a distance just doing charity. I think what we're called to is acts of hospitality. And hospitality, again, is not just having your friends over. Literally, the word for hospitality is love of stranger. So it should be those who can't repay you. It should be those who are beyond you. And so, and so, therefore, how will people know it's because you're Christian? Well, I think you will share the gospel of God and your lives with people along the way. And
there should be, and very much so, that I think the criticism is that, isn't it? How will people know? But there should be something different. That's the point. Isn't that the point? What we're saying, it shouldn't look just like being nice.
Yes.
There should be something more distinctive in the way we live, so that even if you had no words, there should already be something people are looking at, going, "That's different to those guys who are not Christians." There's something, and I think that's maybe what we struggle with. That we do just think where we just look the same. That's the problem.
And we therefore rely on cleverness, apologetics, the quality of our church services and our coffee and our music as the bridge to sort of hook people into the Christian world, rather than love. Rather than, we're if we don't invest in really counterintuitive, countercultural, counterconditional love, then that's meant to be what hooks people into the Christian life. And so we go for substitutes. And so we have, we're going to have a series of talks about what Jesus would say about the European Union, or what Jesus would say about vaccines, or what Jesus would say about artificial intelligence, so that the man in the street will see the billboard that says, "Come and hear what Jesus would say to Bill Gates," and so we try to be contemporant, and that's and intellectual, and show that we can go toe to toe with the worldviews of our day. And that's what's going to hook people in, as opposed to, by this all people will know that you are my disciples if you have a series of interesting lectures on artificial intelligence. I think going back to the early church is
when are these lectures happening?
The letter to Diognetus is fascinating. We've got some slides that we can go through, but we don't exactly know who wrote this. We think maybe it was Polycarp, who was a disciple of John, who himself discipled Irenaeus. So here is someone very early on in the 2nd century writing about how Christians are different from everybody else. And he says, "For the Christians are distinguished from other men, neither by country nor language, nor the customs which they observe, for they neither inhabit cities of their own, nor employ a peculiar form of speech, nor lead a life which is marked out by any singularity." So again, it's quite different to the Judaism that's ended up rejecting the way of Jesus. Was very much you've got to keep kosher, obviously, right? And you've got to stick to the dietary laws and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the Apostle Paul is like, okay, the kosher stuff is gone, and this is Israel going global. And so actually Christianity was really this incredibly universalistic faith that people just hadn't encountered before. Usually you were in your family, and the father in the family was the paterfamilias, and he was the priest of this little cult. And you just had your very domestic, local, parochial gods. And Christians are saying, we worship the God of the whole universe, and he's for everybody, and it doesn't matter about your diet, doesn't matter about your dress. And this is absolutely, baffling for everybody. No, Diet is a massive deal for everybody on planet Earth. It has massive spiritual significance for everyone on planet Earth, except for Christians and the post-Christian West. But that was what was striking. So there was an element of contextualization to the Christian. So if we keep going on that slide, The course of conduct which they follow has not been devised by any speculation or deliberation of inquisitive men, nor do they, like some, proclaim themselves the advocates of any merely human doctrines, but inhabiting Greek as well as barbarian cities, according as the lot of each of them has determined, and following the customs of the natives in respect of clothing, food, and the rest of their ordinary conduct, they display to us their wonderful and confessedly striking method of life. So on the next slide, this is very interesting about this distinctiveness of them, as well as the missional character of them. They dwell in their own countries, but simply as sojourners. As citizens, they share in all things with others, and yet endure all things as if foreigners. Every foreign land is to them as their native country, and every land of their birth as a land of strangers. They marry, as do all. They beget children, but they do not cast away fetuses. They do not expose their infants. They are pro-life. They have a common table, but not a common bed. Such a great line, isn't it? It's like they're very generous with their money and their hospitality. They are very stingy with their sexuality. You know, it's like a common table, but not a common bed. They are in the flesh, but they do not live after the flesh. They pass their days on earth, but they are citizens of heaven. They obey the prescribed laws and at the same time surpass the laws by their lives. They love all men and are persecuted by all. And there's one more slide as well, but I just love the distinctiveness of it, but it's not a distinctiveness that is against the nations. It's a distinctiveness that is for the world. They are unknown and condemned. They are put to death and restored to life. They are poor, yet make many rich. They are in lack of all things and yet abound in all. They are dishonored and yet in their very dishonor are glorified. They are evil spoken of and yet are justified. They are reviled and blessed. They are insulted and repay the insult with honor. They do good, yet are punished as evildoers. When punished, they rejoice as if quickened into life. They are assailed by the Jews as foreigners and are persecuted by the Greeks. Yet those who hate them are unable to assign any reason for their hatred. So it's such a compelling image, isn't it? And obviously drawing very richly upon the New Testament in terms of, you know, reviled yet answering revilement with blessing and all that kind of. But yeah, what really marks them out is that countercultural, counterconditional love. Really, what would it look like to be a church like that today? And I think Tim Keller points out things like that and says it's very interesting how the church of the first few centuries would have been considered both more conservative and more progressive than our modern sensibilities. So, you know, they tick the box on pro-life, they tick the box on conservative sexuality, but they're also into racial reconciliation and redistribution of wealth. And, you know, so on the money and race issues, they sound like left-wingers. And on the sex and pro-life issues, they sound like right-wingers. And Tim Keller would be like, yeah, because they're from above. It's just, there's just no earthly explanation for them. And what really strikes me about that is that the society itself is the apologetic. This new community that lives, that's like, how do you live? Like, how do you escape the culture wars of left versus right? They're like, we found a way. We've found a way not to be entirely left wing, entirely right wing. We found a way to be counterculture and to be different. And then at that stage, you're like, well, if you want in on this, you can come on in. But it's a distinctiveness that is letting your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and they will glorify God on the day He visits us. I was preaching on Philippians yesterday, and was really struck by the Apostle Paul in Philippians 3, verses 15 and following. He talks about how the apostles and others lived a cross-shaped life as models to others. And the word for model is the word tupos, and it's the word for an impression, a mark, and it's the very same word for, in John chapter 20, Thomas says, I will believe only if I see the tupos, if I see the marks in the body of Christ, the marks where the cross of Jesus has impressed itself on the body of Jesus. And Paul says, okay, you guys, you need to live cross-shaped lives, and that will be a model. And people will be able to look at the ways in which the cross has impressed itself on you.
Yeah.
And how does the world get to believe in God? Well, you got to see Christ. Okay, how do you see Christ? Well, you see the body of Christ. And what should you see when you see the body of Christ? You should see marks.
Yeah.
You should see the way of the cross impressing itself on the members of the body. And when Thomas saw that, he went from doubt to belief. What caused Thomas to say, "My Lord and my God," when he saw the way of the cross impressed on the members of the body? That's a mission strategy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And at that point, when we care for one another and pastor one another and disciple one another in the way of the cross, that's not a distraction from the mission. It shouldn't be like, why am I wasting all my time, you know? And when we deal with the bruised reeds and the smoldering wicks from Isaiah 42, well, Christ, a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. And the care with which Jesus draws near to the brokenhearted and binds up the brokenhearted and the wounded and takes care of the flock, that's not a distraction. And it's not like, you know, if you're pastoring wounded sheep, you shouldn't be thinking, "Oh, I need to get out. Come on, yeah."
Checking your watch. Like, come on, we've got evangelism to do.
The Titanic is sinking. You know, it's what we were talking about last week. You know, if your one model of the Christian life is the Titanic is sinking and I need to get people to the life raft, then like, how much empathy are you going to have with someone who's like, "Oh, I don't really, you know, I'm depressed." You're like, "I don't care if you're depressed," and that would be the entirely right thing to do if you're on the Titanic and your friend is a bit, you know, down in the dumps.
Yeah. Now is not the time.
Now is not the time. You get the gun out and you say, "Come with me. I don't care. You know, I don't." Yes, come with me if you want to live. You know, and that should be our mission. We should be the Terminator, right? If that's our mission theology, but it's not. It's there is a body that is meant to be impressed with the way of Christ, and yeah, it's meant to be on show to a watching world, distinctively shining out. But to care for our wounded is not a distraction from mission. And I remembered again today what Mark Driscoll said back in 2012, which my goodness, have a look at this. This is really a point of view in which caring for the flock distracts you from the mission. Here's what Mark Driscoll said at an Acts 29 boot camp, right?
Yeah,
you know, army.
Sense of what it's like, doesn't it?
Yeah, here's the drill sergeant. He says, "Here's what I've learned. You cast vision for your mission, and if people don't sign up, you move on. You move on. There are people that are going to die in the wilderness, and there are people that are going to take the hill. That's just how it is." Right? Just like... He's got this mashup in mind of there's the Exodus walking through the wilderness, and then there are people who are going to take the hill. And you're like, what are you, Saving Private Ryan? Or what's like, suddenly it's become a war movie. And there are people that are going to die in the wilderness, says Driscoll. And there are people that are going to take the hill. And who is Mark Driscoll going to pour himself into? Only the guys that are going to take the hill. That's just how it is. Too many guys waste too much time trying to move stiff-necked, stubborn, obstinate people. Right? If you can't take the hill, that's what you are. You're stiff-necked and obstinate. I am all about blessed subtraction. There is a pile of dead bodies behind the Mars Hill bus, and by God's grace, it'll be a mountain by the time we're done. You either get on the bus or you get run over by the bus. Those are the options, but the bus ain't gonna stop. Wow. And this is why when somebody mentioned total church, this is part of my reticence in jumping in with both feet to the total church thing. Co-written by Tim Chester and Steve Timmis, who went on to take over from Mark Driscoll at Acts 29 and had his own issues. And I think part of it is the life of the church is the mission of God. And everything is, we're on the bus, and if you're not on the bus, you get run over by the bus, or we're going to take the hill, and if you can't take the hill, then we leave you behind. Like, whatever happened to never leave a brother behind? Like, whatever happened? Like, Yeah. Yeah. Brandon John Kemeny says, oh, that the norm were not inviting people to church, but inviting people to meet the church. Then to be the church. That church would be something people see, meet, and want to be part of. That sounds pretty healthy to me.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, if church is a living thing, and it is because it's a body, or it's a vine, you know, it's a living organism. It's a body, it's a vine. If it's healthy, it will grow. And we, you know, this is Mental Health Awareness Week, you know, and you might think, oh, there'll be some people who are quite, you know, into caring for those who struggle with their mental health. And then there'll be others who are more interested in the mission of the church, this different thing. And what if we are the place where bruised reeds and smoldering wicks, you know, don't get crushed and snuffed out?
Yeah.
Might that be what a modern day letter to Diognetus might say? You know, they had time for people who, you know, you go on Instagram and you're being told, you know, cut the toxic people out of your life, right? What if church was not the place that cut the toxic people out of their lives, but actually poured life into them and tried to be a place of healing?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be an attractive mission? I think so. So, guys, great chat in the top chat, and do keep the comments coming in the comment section underneath on the YouTube video. But that should do us for today. We started 10 minutes late and we'll finish 10 minutes late. That'll do. That'll do. If you haven't joined us on the Tickety Talk, do subscribe to Speak Life UK there. What other social media can people be a part of?
Yep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Again, just search for Speak Life UK. You'll find us there. And you can always sign up for our emails as well. So speaklife.org.uk/sign up, and you'll get a kind of roundup of all the kind of resources that we're putting out each week.
Brilliant. And this is also a podcast, so you can subscribe to the Speak Life podcast on the podcatcher of your choice, and you can share that around as well. Paul Feasey, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Glen Scrivener.
And we'll see you again next week. God bless. Bye-bye.
Take care.